Hello, welcome all. This is Abhilash. So today in this session, we have a topic to be discussed, that is economics of banking institutions. So let's first start with the banking. What is the banking? So Banking Regulation Act of India 1949 defines banking as accepting for the purpose of lending or if investment of deposits of money from the public, repayable on the demand or otherwise, or withdrawable by check, draft order and otherwise. The Reserve Bank of India Act 1934, the Banking Regulation Act 1949 govern the banking operations of India. So we have a two in India. Banking has to be followed two act in Reserve Bank of India Act 1934 and Banking Regulation Act 1949. Banking structure in India, where a regulated banking system is a key comfort for local and foreign stakeholders in any country. Prudent banking regulation is recognized as one of the reasons why India was less affected by the global financial crisis. Banks can be broadly categorized as a commercial banks or cooperative banks. Banks which meet specific criteria are included in the second schedule of the RBI Act 1934. These are called schedule bank. So you might have heard about the schedule bank, persons and all. This comes under the RBI Act 1934. There may be commercial banks or cooperative banks. So the scheduled banks are considered to be safer and are entitled to special facilities like refinance from RBI. Inclusion in the schedule also comes with its responsibility of reporting to RBI and maintaining a percentage of its demand and time liabilities as a cash reserve ratio, that is CRR, with RBI. This is the structure of banks in India. So each and every bank has to be follow RBI's rules, act and everything. So especially we have three banks: commercial banks, cooperative banks, and development banks. Okay, so commercial banks are nationalized and private. Under the cooperative banks, most of banks are regulated by the government. Most banks are owned by the government. Like short term, they are offering the short term credit, long term credit. So short-term credits offering in the agriculture sector and urban sector. Okay, so we again we have a third development banks that comes under the industrial, agriculture, and exim. So industrial, if I talk about the industrial, so we have a IDBI which is specially open for the industrial sector. This is a development bank which is running by the government. It is a government entity. So broad classification of banks in India. The RBI is the supreme monetary and banking authority in the country and has the responsibility to control the banking system in the country. It keeps the reserve of all scheduled banks and hence is known as the Reserve Bank. So which we have a discuss before two slides, right? So as I told you, the reserves of scheduled banks, all the info has to be keeps with the Reserve Bank, right? Then second classification is public sector banks, that is state of bank and its associate, then nationalized bank, then regional rural banks sponsored by public sector banks, which are government entity. Public sector banks, old generation private banks, foreign new generation banks, and banks in India. So under the public sector banks, we have eight state banks of Indian associate like State Bank of Hyderabad, State Bank of India, State Bank of Rajasthan, right? Likewise, State Bank is having their eight entity, right? But recently, State Bank of India and Hyderabad has been merged, so both are the same bank, right? There are around 19 nationalized bank, 196 rural banks sponsored by the public sector bank like Maharashtra Gramin Rural. You might have heard about this bank name, right? If you went to the village or some taluka sector, then you will see this name. We have a old generation 22 banks that are the private, then foreign 8 banks. Right now we have only 7. Why? Because Citibank has they has closed their business in India, and we have 40 banks in India under the private sector. Cooperative sector banks, we have like state cooperative banks, then central cooperative, then primary agriculture credit societies, then land development banks and state land development banks. So this all comes under the scheduled banks actually. So development banks, likewise, we have development banks mostly provide long-term finance for setting up industries. They also provide short-term finance for export and import activities. So we have a Industrial Finance Corporation of India (IFSCI). This is the Development Bank. Then Industrial Development of India. This is IDBI, as I told you before as well. Then Industrial Investment Bank of India (IIBI). Then SIDBI. Then NABARD. You might have heard about the SIDBI and NABARD, right? SIDBI is the Small Industrial Development Bank of India, and then National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development (NABARD), and Export Import Bank of India. So these are all the development banks, and all are regulated by the government. Commercial bank. Commercial banks comprising public sector banks. Again, let me tell you, we will be discussing commercial bank, retail banks in next session as well. So let's have a introduction here. Commercial banks comprising public sector banks, foreign banks, and private sector banks represent the most important financial intermediary in the Indian financial system. The changes in banking structure and control have resulted due to the wider geographical spread and the deeper penetration of rural areas and higher mobilization of deposits, recollection of bank credit to private activities, and lower operational autonomy for a bank management. Public sector commercial banks dominate the commercial banking scene in the country. The largest commercial banks in India is SBI, right? One of the largest bank in India, that is SBI, State Bank of India, and its group. Main function of commercial banks are like acceptance of deposit, fixed deposit, saving a bank account and current account, advance in the loan, cash credit, call loans, overdraft, bills discounting. Then agency function, collecting receipts, making payments, buy and sell securities, trustee and executor. Uh, Generally, utility functions like issuing letter of credit, traveler checks, underwriting shares and debentures, safe custody of valuables. That is we nowadays bank are offering the locker, right, where we can keep our gold. That comes under the safe custody of valuables. Providing ATM and credit card facilities, providing credit information. So these all are the main functions of the commercial banks. You may know all about the functions that you are using in your daily life, right? So next is cooperative bank. So these banks plays a vital role in mobilizing saving and stimulating agriculture investment. Cooperative credit institutions account for the second largest proportion of 44.6% of total institutional credit. The cooperative sector is a very much useful for rural area. The cooperative banking sector is divided into the following categories: state cooperative banks, central cooperative banks, and primary agricultural credit societies. All are comes in the under the cooperative bank. Development banks we have discussed earlier as well. The development bank may be defined as a financial institution concerned with the providing all types of financial assistance to business units in the form of loans, underwriting, investment, guarantee, operations, and promotional activities, economic development in general, and industrial development in particular. A development bank is basically a term lending institution. It is a multi-purpose financial institution with a broad development outlook. The Industrial Finance Corporation of India (IFCI) and the first development bank was established in 1948. Subsequently, many other institutions were set up like IDBI, IFCI, CDB, then NABARD. Functions of development bank: fostering industrial growth, providing long-term assistance, then balanced development, then providing promotional services, infrastructure building, entrepreneur development, and fulfilling socio-economic objectives. Investment banks. The meaning of the investment banks is like financial intermediaries that acquire the saving of people and direct these funds into the business enterprises seeking capital for the acquisition of plant and equipment and for holding inventories are called an investment bank. It's a feature of long-term financing, security, merchandiser, security middleman, insurer, and underwriter. Functions of investment banks are capital formation, underwriting, purchase of securities, selling of securities, advisory services, acting as a dealer, or you may call as a broker. Merchant banks, institutions that render a wide range of services such as the management of customer securities, portfolio management, counseling, insurance, etc. are called merchant banks. Functions of merchant banks are sponsoring issues, loan syndication, servicing of issues, portfolio management, arranging fixed deposit, helps in merger and acquisitions. So SBI and other government banks also holding merchant banks as well. They have a separate operation center. They have separate entity as well for handling merchant business. Next, so these all are the list of commercial banks, but which all are the government entity, as are called as a public sector bank, like State Bank of India, then Dena Bank, Allahabad Bank, Indian Bank, Andhra Bank, Indian Overseas Bank, Bank of Baroda, Oriental Bank of Commerce, then Bank of India, IDBI, Vijaya, Punjab and Sindh, Bank of Maharashtra, PNB, Punjab National Bank, Canara, Syndicate, then Central Bank of India, Union Bank of India, Corporation Bank, United Bank of India, Nico Bank. So recently, in the last year, the central government has merged three banks into the one, like Syndicate, Canara, and one more bank only is a one bank. So they have merged their account into one bank, and all three banks comes under the Canara Bank. So these are the Indian private banks: Axis Bank, Bank of Rajasthan, Bharat Overseas Bank, Catholic, Centurion Bank of Punjab, Catholic Syrian Bank, City Union Bank, Development Bank, Credit Bank, Dhanlakshmi Bank, Federal Bank, Ganesh Bank of Kurunwad, SDFC, ICICI, IndusInd, ING, Visya, JNK, Karnataka Bank in Limited, Karur Vasya, Kotak Mahindra, Lakshmi Vilas, Nainital, Ratnakar Bank, RBL, ISBI Commercial and International Bank, South Indian Bank, and Tamil Nadu Mercantile Bank. These all are the Indian private bank. They have operation all over India. So so we will discuss next topic in the next slide and next session. Thank you. Best wishes.